From Boca Raton, Florida, this is Behind the Bima. On this episode, Rabbi Goldberg and co-hosts Rabbi Philip Moskowitz and Rabbi Josh Brody are joined by Rabbi Dovid Fendel, founder and Rosh Yeshiva of the Max and Ruth Schwartz Yeshivat Hesder of Sderot, a symbol of indomitable faith and commitment to the continuity of Jewish learning and life under the constant threat of rocket fire. Rabbi Fendel shares his unique perspective on leadership, courage, and the profound connection between Torah learning and living in the land of Israel. More than just a discussion, this is an inspiring journey into the soul of a community that stands defiantly against the shadows, radiating light and hope for all of us. All this and more, Behind the Bima.
Welcome to this week's Behind the Bima. As always, privileged to be joined by my dear friends and colleagues, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz and Rabbi Joshua Brody, for a very important conversation. We continue to focus, of course, on Israel, where all of our hearts and minds are. Rabbi Dovid Fendel, the founding Rosh Yeshiva of Sderot, who hasn't heard of Sderot, and unfortunately back in the news this week with rockets once again being aimed there. And yet he continues to be such a positive light, and we're looking forward to sharing that conversation. But first, Rabbi Moskowitz and Rabbi Brody, how are you?
Rabbi Brody, I'll let you take this because we had a spectacular community-wide Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut event this week, led by our very own Rabbi Brody. So Rabbi Brody, do you want to talk about what made that such a moving and special night?
Listen, it was a tough year to do anything because no matter who we would bring in as a speaker or whatever the program would be, the challenge is how do you attract people that they would want to participate. And on top of everything, you have Yom HaZikaron, the transition into Yom HaAtzmaut, but you also have the hostages, which are not technically part of either one of those days, but they are completely part of everything that we're doing. So it wasn't, I don't think it was easy. I think that we were able to be sensitive to what is going on there and hopefully give our community a feeling and step aside from everything else you're doing for an hour and just focus on what's going on there. Someone even said, oh, we should just broadcast it live, so people in Israel can see, our partner city in Israel can see what we're doing here. And I said, don't do that, because no matter what we do, no matter who we would bring in, it just would not even come close to the experience of anyone doing anything in Israel. But we tried our best. And I think
you did well. It was meaningful, it was moving, and it sort of brought us back. I think over the last 7 months, it's been hard to maintain the level. And I think this, I don't know, for me, some of the images and movies and depictions and hostages, it sort of just brought you back to that place of really emotion, raw, unity, love, connection, Israel. And I thought that was really, really powerful. I've been thinking a lot about lately. I started writing this up as my article for this week, and it didn't flow, so I'm writing about something else instead. But this notion that, in a functional family, which I don't take for granted, hopefully at the end of Pesach, if parents were with children, grandchildren, children with parents, they said, when are we seeing you next? I know that's a refrain that I've heard in my family. I say to my children, or my parents have said to me, sort of, when are we getting together again? When are we seeing you next? When are we all together next time? And the answer could be like, in 3 years, there's a bar mitzvah in the family. Right. The answer could be,
the next
the answer could be in 2 weeks, barbecue, Sunday, everyone's coming over.
Right.
But there's this sort of mindfulness and awareness of, when can we get together again? So I've been thinking about that vis-a-vis Israel. And I say that because I booked another trip, and I feel enormously privileged. I have family there I can stay with. I have children there. There's the ability to go for a lot of different reasons, and not everyone has that. There's some people that they're starting from scratch. They don't have connections. They don't have family. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to stay. That's not easy. There's a lot of people, financially it's expensive. It's not easy at all. A lot of people with work, you can't take off. You can't go. But I've been thinking a lot about people and trying to make it sort of the standard of, when are you going to Israel next? And the answer, again, could be 3 years, where we're planning 3 years. We've got this reason, this cause, this simcha in the family. It's going to be sukkahs. We're saving up. It's going to be 5 years, 3 years, a year. But I don't know. Every time I flip pages, and I know Taina, I understand why people are also going on vacation elsewhere, or Europe, or South America, or Australia, or South Africa, or Pesach programs in different places. But I don't know. For me, there's sort of like right now, and it's an extraordinary time. And I'm not sitting in judgment. I'm talking and thinking out loud with you. If a person's mother is sick, God forbid, father is sick, you sort of say, maybe other years you don't have to always use your vacation to visit your parents, but if they're sick, you're not going on tour somewhere else. Right. You're sort of living with that. When are we going next there to be together? So again, I don't take it for granted, and I know I'm privileged, and I'm not sitting in judgment. I'm sort of challenging all of us. Yeah. How do we save up, or how do we make the connections, or how do we put on the calendar, or how do we plan, or how because there's so many people you meet and you're like, when we last in Israel, I'm like 22 years ago, 16 years ago,
Never been.
years. And by the way, if it's people like, and I've never left Boca or I don't go anywhere, okay, but then they'll be like, what do you do in the summer? Oh, I'm going here, there. When's the last time you were in Israel? Oh, it's been years. So now is the time to just kick it toward the top of the list. If you have the ability and you have the days off and you can get away and you have the resources, just push it up the list and be living with the, like, when am I going next? Okay,
So
that's all.
I agree with you. I agree with that tension. Baruch Hashem, I also have tickets for the summer, and I'm very much looking forward to being there. I found this week very challenging, personally. Like, there have been many moments over the last number of months where you've had to look in the mirror and say, I'm living in America, my heart's in Israel, what does that mean? I really felt that come to the head on Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. I almost felt like Jewish history was living in a split screen, and there was like the existence that was taking place in Israel with the videos and the tekeses on Yom HaZikaron, and then the programs on Yom HaAtzmaut, and the reality that existed here in America. And I think everyone did the best that they could, but it's not the same as being in Israel. So that tension that I felt very palpably this week, I think, is exactly what you're describing, which is like, where are our priorities? When's the next time I'm going to Israel? Even if it's in 5 years and I have to save, $20 a month between now and then to get there, but like, is my entire essence focused and directed towards Israel? Or am I a diaspora Jew? I live in Boca, relative comfort, not so much anti-Semitism, even though I read about it on the news. And I go to Israel when it's convenient, but I go to, Mexico when it's convenient. I think that's the challenge, like at its core of what you and I are feeling. And I think so many others in America are feeling as well.
Yeah, I would say the place I felt that really starkly for 48 straight hours was, not everybody knows this, but on WhatsApp statuses where people are sort of sharing what's going on in their life, and your status of your contacts, it was like so clear where someone was, what their consciousness was, what they were posting, what they were oblivious to. And like you said, with no judgment, and lahavdil, it's very different, but bli ayin hara, in the past when we've had a hurricane facing us, where you're like living, breathing, prepping, hunkering down, and then you see someone else is like having a nice day, and you're like, what is the matter with you? Why aren't you living what we're living? Obviously, totally different. It's a bad example, but like you said, I think that was a great term you just coined, the split screen Judaism, of how it's unfolding there, how it's unfolding here. We could work as much as we can to align them and to have them overlap and to have a picture within picture, to continue your metaphor. But there is that level of that split screen, and it was felt, and it was an awkward, difficult, tense, mixed emotion, complicated 48 hours confronting that reality, feeling the empathy and wanting to be there and being there while being here, and also figuring out what's right for me and where am I at versus having opinions about what other people are doing and not being a judgment of anyone.
Right. And also what to say. I know you and I spoke about this earlier this week also. You want to check in on your friends and family in Israel. You want to let them know that Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut aren't normal days for you. And yet you don't want to appear like you're disingenuous. Oh, just check in, love. Like, what do you say in a way that communicates that I'm with you, that my heart is with you, that I'm together with you, but yet I'm not, and your children are on the front lines, and at least mine are not, and you're living that reality every day, and I don't, and it's complicated. The only thing I can say, and I give myself a little bit of a pass on this, is the tension itself, I find, at least gives me a little bit of optimism. In other words, the moment you stop feeling that tension, you're in trouble. But I know that for the three of us, that constant tension that we feel of our heart is there, but we're here, and what does that mean, and what does that look like? And I think that's at least a healthy tension.
Yeah, I just think that we could put so much effort into putting together a program, even on Yom HaAtzmaut, whatever that might be, and just imagine the hours we would put into it and trying to coordinate different pieces. And yet I go on FaceTime with my kids, and they're just having a barbecue in a local park in Herzliya, and they're not doing anything. They're just having that, and I feel like that's the program. That's it. But you can't do that. You can't duplicate that feeling. That's all I want to do. Just have a little barbecue.
They're living life, and that's the greatest triumph. And that's really what Rabbi Fendel speaks about, and we're excited to bring you this conversation, because for him in Sderot, that is the answer. When you go to the rooftop of the yeshiva and you see life being lived in Sderot, and cranes and building, and you contrast that from there, that is the answer. And his voice of leadership and optimism and hope and positivity and Torah is really very powerful and very welcome. And it's a privilege to bring you the conversation with Rabbi Dovid Fendel. What a schus it is to go behind the Bima with the great founding Rosh Yeshiva of the Hesder Yeshiva in Sderot, one of the biggest Hesder Yeshivas in Israel. great Talmud Chacham and great leader and builder of Israel. Rabbi Dovid Fendel, thank you so much for being with us, particularly during this time in which in Sderot the rockets seem to have resumed and we know the sirens are going off, and we're grateful for your finding some time to be with us today.
It's great to be with all of you. I was just with you in America. It's even better from Israel.
It was a privilege and an honor to have you in our community. So Rabbi Fendel, catch us up a little bit since you've returned. It seemed that there was a little lull. There was success in Gaza, that rockets were not being fired, or at least so much less frequently. And over the last 48 hours, that has not been the case. So what's it been like since you're back? It must be so traumatizing for a community in Sderot who hoped and wished they could be moving forward to be right back in that place, that running to shelters. Could you take us through a little bit what's been happening since you've returned?
There's a lot of boom, a lot of sounds, and it's not simple, but most of the sounds are us attacking the little small Gaza Strip. Basically, we won. I take people up to the roof and I say, this used to be Gaza, no longer. They still have a little bit, last gasps, but we're winning and we're going to win.
Are there a lot of rockets? Have there been a lot of sirens in Sderot again?
So sporadically, and we had a beautiful parade, which was a sight to see. We're talking about 40,000 people, and the yeshiva stayed together, and a lot of good singing and very spirited. But in the middle, there was one rocket, and that was frightening everybody on the floor. But thank God.
Wow. We understand that the yeshiva is one of the largest Hesder yeshivas in Israel. Many people would say, oh, it's a little dangerous down in that part of Israel. How do you understand that so many people want to be there?
So you have to repeat it, because how do you understand that so many people what?
I'm sorry, I was just asking.
Start again.
That it is one of the largest yeshivas in the Hesder movement, and many would think that it would be a safer place. Let's just stay near Yerushalayim or some of the other communities. But yet it is such a popular place. How do you understand that so many people want to go down there?
So I used to think it's because of the Rosh Yeshiva, but it's not. I checked it out. We happen to have a great atmosphere and a great staff and great guys, and they're filled with idealism. Today, a lot of them come from Ashkelon, Beersheba. That's also not so safe. And we're all in this together, and they come with a lot of idealism, and they come with a lot of spirit, and they realize their responsibility. Tchilat nefilah nisa. If we start to run away, that's the beginning of the downfall. Even the Chazon Ish had said in the early 50s that if the people in the South aren't going to stand strongly, then it's just going to move up to Bnei Brak. So we feel we have a special responsibility, and we're all in for it. And these guys are tremendous soldiers. The truth is, they judge the yeshiva by the learning, by the atmosphere, by the spirit. And today, more than ever, they have a special resolve to be there. You should have seen these guys singing on Yom Ha'atzmaut. And when the rocket fell, of course, it's frightening, but they got up. They were the first ones to get up and to revive the spirit.
I want to talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut for a second and Yom HaZikaron, because one of the things that I know that the three of us in America, and I think diaspora Jews in general, have struggled with is the distance, not just physical distance, but emotional distance that exists between Israel and America. And while we obviously in America do our best to keep ourselves connected to Israel, at the end of the day, we aren't under rocket attack. Our children in many cases, although some here are, but we don't live it and breathe it every second of every day the same way you do in Israel. You were just in America, you're back in Israel now. What are some of your observations of the difference between diaspora Jewry and Israeli Jewry in terms of the war, and specifically when it comes to Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut? What are some things you noticed? What are some things you would want from diaspora Jews? What are some things you hope that Jews in America would understand or would motivate them to action?
First of all, I was so impressed with the real support and the genuine interest and a lot of generosity. And they feel that we're one. It was very startling for me to hear a lot of sentences like, you guys in Israel are lucky you have an army. or others that said that we have to buy apartments in Israel because we have to have a safe place to run to. But at the same time, I saw there was genuine love, concern, and we're all in this together. We are involved in major building projects, and that's our real revenge to the Palestinians. Palestinians thought to make Sderot into a ghost town. We're not going to let them. We're turning into a capital of Torah and Zionism. They tried to destroy. They can't keep up with the pace of all the building that's going on. They tried to break our spirit. They didn't realize it's invincible, unbreakable. Our revenge in English doesn't sound so good. Vengeance, anger. But in Hebrew, nikama is a beautiful concept. Kel nikamot Hashem, that we're going to rebuild and we're going to build and we're going to grow. And they won't be able to believe their binoculars. They'd say, hey, I thought we knocked these guys down in spirit. And it's the opposite. Anybody that comes to our roof and just the contrast between the beautiful skyline of Sderot, filled with cranes, filled with building, filled with life, and then contrast that to the darkness of our neighbors that chose to live underground and chose to use all their resources instead of for medicine and for universities and for healing people. They used it to create underground tunnels of destruction. So our response is to build and to grow, to double the yeshiva, to build a girls' school, to build educational centers, to teach heroism. And for that, we really need and turn to American Jewry. But we could count on American Jewry.
Rabbi Fendel, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Where does this passion, this Zionism, this courage, this leadership come from? Obviously, your parents were world-renowned machanchem and founders of Hank and involved in building Jewish community, and you got that from them. Rabbi Fendel and I share a cousin. His first cousin married my first cousin. His first cousin, Rav Zalman Hillel Fendel, tragically passed away at the beginning of Corona. A great Talmid Chacham. You come from a family of Talmidei Chachamim. But the Zionism part, when did you move to Israel? What motivated you and pushed you to move to Israel? And to not just live in Israel and sit and learn, or even to teach, but to be a leader of the religious Zionist community. Where does that come from? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I was born in West Hempstead. Our family took a beautiful trip in 1973 when I was in 7th grade. That was the Yom Kippur War. And my father went from hospital to hospital. He went from school to school and from army base to army base. And of course, that created a real love of everything that's happening in Israel. I told my father I went back 9th grade. At the end, he sent me back for 10th grade. And then again, 12th grade, we graduated after 3 years. And then many years in Shalavim, many years in Merkaz, a little bit in Mir. So that brought the blend of the whole yeshiva world and loving the yeshiva world. And at the same time, loving the beautiful opportunities we have. But it's not one person. There's so many people that are idealistic and so many people that share a dream to build Torah and to build Zionism and to build the city and to build the whole country. But we were given the special privilege of Baruch Marchiv Gad, Kilavi Shachen. People that are on the border have a special need, a special gvura. And it's been 30 years that we've been here. And almost 25 of them were dealing with these Qassam rockets. So we're learning what our responsibility is. And together with hundreds of young people, you can't fail. If you have hundreds of young people with you and they're willing to go to the streets with that spirit and with that energy, and they're willing to go into the school system, and they're willing to make Purim into something fantastic, and mainly Simchas Torah. We're looking forward to next Simchas Torah. That's going to be an awesome, we're going to have to make it doubly as happy as we usually do. We're going to have the whole city hopping and jumping with real thankfulness to God for the miracles, because it could have ended differently. In Sderot alone, 70 terrorists entered the city, and what they were planning, Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim, only they know, Shabachu Kol Haomim, only they know how much Gavar Aleinu Chasdo, what they could have done. It was a matter of seconds, and they took into account everything. The terrorists took into account that there's no army, there's no intelligence, there's no Kitot Konanut. They could dismantle the high tech. They didn't take into account that there's a lot of civilian heroism, and that a lot of people will just take their guns, run outside, and be Moser Nefesh and save people. So we're looking forward to even Shavuot and to all the different Chagim, but mainly next Simchas Torah. You guys are invited to join us. We're going to make sure that we have a double simcha.
Wow. You know, one of the things that you told us when you were here was that there's a feeling of a responsibility, not just for the people and the boys that are in the yeshiva and the girls that go to the different programs, but for the community. You want to tell us how you send people into the local shuls and why you think that's so important?
So it's not by chance that our yeshiva is centrally located in the middle of communities, like surrounded all around. I remember one neighbor wasn't doing too well with us. They didn't like all the noise we make on Friday nights, and they didn't like the hundreds of guys, until one fateful morning where a Qassam rocket fell into their house and the daughter was stuck and she was crying, and all the yeshiva guys came in and we cleaned the house. She's our biggest fan. She told me, wherever you want, whenever you want, I'll tell people what a Yeshivat Hesder could do. We're so proud of the fact that these guys had guns and they were able to give a sense of protection and actual protection. They were able to kill terrorists. Torah magna umatzla. The Torah not only protects in a spiritual way, here these guys were able to take guns. We know, when I first came, Purim, it was very sad for me because I'm used to Yeshivot, I'm used to Yerushalayim, Bnei Brak, and in Sderot it was. So luckily we have 2 days. You guys have 2 days Pesach. We have 2 days. We could go to Yerushalayim. But now you come to Sderot, Ha'ir Sderot Sa'ala V'Samecha. The guys we used to go into the police station, no more. But we used to take over the city. And we feel that's a responsibility that a yeshiva could be a source of a lot of spiritualism, a lot of Torah, and a source of strength. And part of our responsibility in almost our entire staff, each one became a shul rabbi. You come daven with us Shabbos morning, you basically won't see the rabbi. There are no rabbeim. The guys are on their own, which seems to be, that doesn't seem to be too educational, but it's the most educational because they know that their rabbeim are shul rabbis. And these guys are good. They can take over a shul and get people interested. This Simchas Torah on Friday night, there were a lot of centers where there was we used to have only the yeshiva was the real yeshiva type of dancing. But this Simchas Torah Friday night, it was awesome singing and dancing. And imagine if that could happen, and it's happening in many towns, in Kiryat Shmona, in Malot, in Dimona, in Yerucham, that Yeshivat Hesder see themselves as with a special responsibility that can make a social revolution, and that can bring that's a lot of kiru. We want to learn from your communities what you guys are doing in terms of outreach and in terms of inviting people. I'm going to be telling my guys what I saw, how the Shabbos table looks at the rabbis in Boca, at Rabbi Goldberg, and we have to bring that here more, and that's a tremendous responsibility. We believe that's what Torah is all about. Wasn't given to individuals.
Rabbi Fendel, you mentioned October 7th. Could you share one or two stories of Sderot? You know, I know that you're focused on, and I really admire that about you, is not wallowing in the pain and sorrow of which there is so much, but talking about our triumph and our victory and the light and the future and the building. So without wanting to go back too much, but could you just take us back to that morning on October 7th and in Sderot, which we know has been this target for all these years of the rockets, but also was infiltrated by terrorists. Are there one or two stories that stand out of those the volunteer heroes who ran towards the problems instead of away?
One story, a tragic story, and it's really the only example that we have that a certain grandfather made a tragic mistake. He was visiting his son. This grandfather happens to live on my street, but he was on the other side of the town, and he was visiting his son and grandchildren, and he heard the shooting, and unfortunately he moved the curtain, and they made eye contact with 5 terrorists. 4 of them were already walking. They called them back, and they bombarded the house. They all ran into the safe room, and the son was showing me how he held with all his might, and he said, try. He said, you try to hold it, and I'll try to be on the outside. And he opened up and he was right away able to open it. I wasn't able to resist it. He said, on that Simchas Torah morning, I had superhuman adrenaline, superhuman strength, God-given strength. And he said, I don't know where it came from. Unfortunately, the terrorists were able to shoot the door of the safe room that they were in, and a bullet went straight into his father's chest, and he couldn't help his father because he told me otherwise you'd be hearing in the news an entire family, his wife, his mother, his two kids, they all would, everybody would have been killed. Unfortunately, the father was killed. We had many examples in the yeshiva. We'll just tell one of one of our rabbeim that he got into his motorcycle and he knew not to go straight where the terrorists were. He went around. Unfortunately, he had to confirm the death of people on the way and other people he was able to help. And then he was under fire and he saw a policeman by the name of Martin that had a bullet in his head. And he was lying in the middle of the street. And he said, I have to save him. And they said, you can't. There's a sniper, very effective. We don't need two people dying. Martin's going. He said, no, I'm making a dash for it. Give me cover fire. Do you know what that means? He's saying, I'm making a dash for it. That means he's putting his life on. Unbelievable. That's the type of heroism. That's the type of mesirut nefesh. And that's just one small example. The policemen, they told us from their hospital beds that they were thinking that they have to stop these terrorists because they thought we were almost 1,000 guys. We were less, but we had told them that Saturday night we're going to have a big event. Akafot Shniot, people, politicians, people were supposed to come from all over. Next year we're going to have to do it doubly as strong. It's another debt that we have. But they said that they fought with all their might because they knew that if the terrorists would leave that area of the police station, they could, God forbid, just a few feet away and come up to the yeshiva. They didn't know that we were prepared. We had a lot of guns ready. So it's a little bit fortunate for the terrorists that they didn't dare come up towards us because we were really ready at that point because our guys were already down there and they came running back to tell us that the terrorists right there. And we had a lot of ammunition and we used that ammunition to, first of all, to kill terrorists and second of all, to protect. One story that is an unbelievable story. A guy living in Gedera, and he's an army man, retired, very wealthy, not religious in an observant way, but very religious because he heard that there are problems in Sderot. He drove from Gedera to Sderot, and he was able to go to another one of our rabbis that was injured, that he greeted someone. He said, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. The guy took out a Kalashnikov and started to shoot at him. So he was stuck in his home. His wife didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, a knock on the door. This man from Gedera came, and under fire, he took our rabbi to the hospital. Unfortunately, that same person that saved our rabbi was murdered the next day. These are awesome, heroic stories, and we're a nation of heroes. Heinam Kilavi Yakum, Bechari Nasa. And I don't want to paint the pictures if I'm hopelessly optimistic. This is realistic. There's something beautiful happening. There's a lot of building going on. We're planning to build. We need help, but we're going to do it, and it's going to happen. And we're winning, and we're going to win. There are some voices that are weak voices that have to be silenced, of people that are losing hope. They're wrong because we're so strong and we're so committed. And I'm not talking my own. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about multitudes, hundreds, an entire city, and many cities. I described. We have another Rebbe that lives in Ofakim, but he drives to Sderot. He was one of the people that lit the torch of independence because he's also a hero. We hope he learned it from our yeshiva, but he had it in himself that he was able to go out and stop tens of terrorists. They said they sent a message to their friends, the terrorists, don't come to Ofakim. There's fierce resistance. That fierce resistance was one soldier from our yeshiva that happened to be there, and of course many others, but and one of our rabbeim. So we're giving a real optimistic, realistic.
Let me ask you a question about that, because I think anyone listening is really mesmerized by your optimism, by your descriptions of the heroism and the beauty and the building and the winning and the never losing hope. Is that something that's natural for you, or is that something that you worked on? In other words, are you naturally just an optimistic person who always views the glass half full, or through learning and through your studies at Merkab? Is that something that like you were able to develop that perspective and outlook in this world?
A lot of our Avodat Hashem and a lot of the Kiddush Hashem is watching Israel grow and prosper and develop. That has a lot to do. And I don't know what I would have done if I was in Rav Soloveitchik's, as Rav Soloveitchik describes, after 1948, after 1944 till 1948, he would go on a bus and on a train, on a plane, and priests would look at him almost with pity. And they say, you see, you're accursed people. I don't know what I would do. It's pretty hard. But now we live in a generation, this is what we saw with our own eyes. Everything that happened in the Six-Day War, everything that's happening, the whole country is really growing and prospering. Take a walk around Sderot. Imagine if we could bring the Chafetz Chaim on a little tour, just the Olam HaTorah, just our yeshiva, not even the Haredi yeshiva. I mean, the Haredi yeshiva, his heart wouldn't take it, to see how much learning is going on more than the time of Bayit Sheni. We can't say on a higher level, but the masses are an awesome level of learning. It's a renaissance of Jewish learning. There's a renaissance of building up the land. There's a lot of rich people in Israel. There's a lot of people that are involved in great things. A few terrorists aren't going to scare us away. And you're right. A lot of the optimism does come from learning Rav Kook and learning a lot of Machshevet Yisrael. But I think it's a realistic, and I know it sounds strange to you, and I know that it's not what you're hearing, but it's what we're living. See a beautiful city with parks, and contrast that to the Gaza Strip. Contrast that, look at the whole country. The whole country is growing, and we're going to grow more. I'm not saying we have a lot to daven for, and we have a lot of work, but it's so doable and so within our hands. And we just have to have that spirit and have that courage. And Ishet Re'eu Yomar Chazak. And it could be that has a lot to do with being surrounded by hundreds of young guys that are spirited, energetic, and they're filled with energy to watch our soldiers on Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut. Right before, I saw a whole group of soldiers ready to go into Rafiach, and they wanted a bracha. I said, come to the yeshiva, let's dance. And we brought them. It was a beautiful 2-3 hours, very meaningful, a lot of singing and a lot of dancing with a lot of soldiers. And they were obviously, it's not so simple to go into Rafiach. Afterwards, we found out that as they entered Rafiach, they were barraged by enemy fire. And thank God they weren't hurt. And a lot of them thank us. They say it was that spirit that they got just a few hours before. And but the brachot they received from so many people. Being optimistic is contagious, and that's what we need. But also, at the same time, we need help. We can't do it ourselves. We wish we could. Once Rav Shach said, Reichman was almost able to pull a deal that would have supported the whole world of Torah for the next 100 years. It fell through. He said that's the way it has to be. You can't, but you think we could build Torah ourselves. We need people. We need good friends. We need people to be leaders and to initiate things and to say, I'm in. I'm going to come. I'm going to lead. But you could be sure that you have a lot of people, so many people that are filled with a strong spirit. They're willing to give their lives. They're willing to give their energy, and we didn't know that we had it in us. We didn't know how many great people there are, and we could all be very proud.
Wow. Does the learning, is there a distraction sometimes from the bombs that have been going off for years? Or are the boys that are studying in the yeshiva, are they not thinking about it? Do they forget it? And is their learning much more intense because they know of the power that the learning and the davening that they do actually has an effect? And we could say that in our yeshivas here, we have to learn more and daven more, but it's a whole nother thing when you're hearing explosions going off and you've seen rockets land in your own community for years. Does that transform the base medrash?
It definitely enhances the learning and the whole religious experience, but they have their own challenges. Now, if they don't learn Gemara so well, it's not because they're booming, and we have to address those challenges. And at the same time, we're getting them into sugyot. As we were talking before, we're getting them into high-level learning because we know that's what they need, and that's our responsibility as a yeshiva. And to get them to love Gemara is a challenge. To all their friends are fighting, and they're not scared. That's people get used to things. Obviously, it's interesting that you say that because today, as I was walking to lunch, I saw a whole group of first-year guys. I said, "Are you scared a little bit? Because of the kasamin?" They looked at me and they said, "No, they're really not. Not because they're heroes. Right now, we can hear the booming. It's because you get used to it. We feel protected because all our buildings are protected. If there's an alarm, we all know where to run to. Right now, I'm sitting in a room. It's not protected. But if there's an alarm, it's seconds away. Even on Simchat Torah, we felt very protected and relaxed because our guys were armed and were ready and were really, anybody that would have come, they were ready to return fire and ready to fight. Everything sounds, wow, awesome from far. When you're close, we get used to it. Everybody has their own challenges, but they definitely understand, and it intensifies their responsibility to learn, to daven, and to prepare themselves. They know they're going to also be going to the army at some point, and they have to take advantage of this time. And they have so many high-level rabbanim. One is an officer in the army that he actually went with his guys for a few months, and now he came back. And there's so much guidance, and there's a beautiful atmosphere, especially on Yom Ha'atzmaut. It was such awesome singing. Someone made a picture, I'll try to send it to you, of all the singing and dancing, and everything's green and Israeli flags on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and they contrasted that with a black and white picture of the terrorists entering Sderot. Two pictures, one on top of the other, and we know which is the real picture. And we're proud of our guys, but it's not the people in Kiryat Shmona, in Yerucham. In the base medrash of Yerucham, they had, I think, 11 casualties. In the base medrash of Eli, so they're heroes all around. We had 3 casualties. And a lot of our guys, we consider them heroes, but it's not something only in Sderot. It's something throughout the country, and it's something that we could all take a lot of strength from.
Rabbi Fendel, we're so grateful for your time. I raised the following question, not God forbid to be controversial, but because I think your view is refreshing and positive and important. You made some headlines when in Israel the question of drafting Haredi community and Haredi Yeshiva students into the army came up, and you wrote an article. The headline was Kulanu Panovich, we're all Panovich. And I'm sure you got some criticism. I know maybe from the Haredi community you got some Yashikoach. What did you mean by that? Here, you've been talking for the last half hour, Zionism, building Israel, our guys, they're soldiers, they're learning, they're soldiers, they're learning. One wouldn't expect the founding Rosh Yeshiva of one of the largest Hesder yeshivas to necessarily come out on the side or to take a perspective that we're all Panovich. So what did you mean by that, and why did you think that was important to say now?
First of all, we all feel, and I got this from visiting the injured and from their families, everybody wants tefillah and Torah. And right now people are learning, we need that, we feel kochenu bepinu, that we need that. Right now is not the time to talk against so many beautiful people that are learning. That's the first thing. Second thing, I didn't hide the fact that I'd love to see a lot of Haredi yeshivot is there in each town. I think also socially, what they could do to the army, what they could do to the cities. But the major point was that now, during a war, we think there are ulterior motives of trying to break down the government, trying to weaken the social fabric, trying to make a rift between religious people, and we're not going to let them do that. It's so ineffective to talk now that they have to get drafted as people are being buried. It's if we want them in the army, and we want some of them, as we also want a nice strong force of people learning. Just like in the religious Zionist community, we have a lot of yeshivot that people are learning till they go into the army. We feel that in order to make the army ready, in order to make Israeli society ready for really and make the Haredim ready, the way is not to create a civil war and to talk against such a beautiful community that's doing so much good. And especially now, as there's a war going on, we need the Torah, we need the tefillah. Sometimes I'm so impressed by soldiers that say, learn, daven, we need it. And that's it's important. Obviously, afterwards, when it's not a political issue, we have to figure out how there's so many people that could find themselves in the army and that could make a big difference, not only bitchuni, not only defensively, not only to create that defense, but also on a social level, because the army is a melting pot of Israeli society, and there's a lot to think and to talk. But right now, Kulanu Panovich, if they're going to attack Panovich and belittle all the learning and all the Mesirut Nefesh that those people have, and all the love that they have of Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Torah Yisrael, we're just going to drift and end up a few civil wars on a few fronts. And there's some people that are bad, that's their goal. They would like to see us all fighting, and they want to weaken us. They want the government to crumble. And now is not the time. And if I'm very proud of, we respect, and our guys know how to respect, even if we disagree on many issues. We think that we have a special, beautiful mitzvah of going to the army. It's a mitzvah that we waited for thousands of years. The Rambam, when he talks about Hanukkah, he says it's a mitzvah chaviva. It's a special, it's something very beautiful when the Maccabim took arms and were able to retake Yerushalayim. And to remember that, the Rambam says there's a special chavivus. We feel there's a special, something very special about being able to have that beautiful picture of a Ben Torah, a guy that has a Mishnah Berurah in his hand, and he tzitzes out, and at the same time, he's on the front lines. That's something that the times of David HaMelech, that reminds us of the beautiful soldiers of Yeshua ben Nun that had a Seder at night when they couldn't fight. They were able to learn. And as Rav Lichtenstein once said, the first Rosh Yeshiva of Hesder was Yeshua ben Nun. We believe that there's something very beautiful about that, but we're not going to let them make a fight between us and create that rift, and also belittle the beautiful learning that's going on.
Rabbi Fendel, a number of years ago, you compared Sderot to the spine of Israel, and he said that just as if a spine is weakened or it breaks, so the entire body is paralyzed, so too if something happens to Sderot, or if it goes down, it could paralyze the entire nation. Those are obviously such prescient words, as obviously on October 7th, Sderot was, as you described it, such a strong bastion of strength and of heroism. For people who have not been to Sderot, paint a picture of everyday life there and why people should come to visit you, to visit the yeshiva, and they should take pride in the role that Sderot is playing, not just during the war, but for the state of Israel.
The Palestinians took Sderot as a test case. They even said in the name of Arafat that the whole Israeli society is just not going to work, because you have Ethiopians, you have Russians, one or two guys came from America, for instance, and there are people from North Africa and from Moroccans, and it's going to explode socially. That's what Arafat, Yimach Shemo, thought. Of course, he was wrong, because there's something that unites the Jewish people. They thought that since it's socioeconomically depressed and socially challenged, and it's on the weaker side of sociology, they thought that if they attack it and they just target it slowly, we're going to just break and we're going to fall, and then they could move in. And there's so many good people. I'll just tell you, once, many years ago, a girl by the name of Ela Bukassis was killed by a Qassam rocket, and that frightened us all, because she's someone that we knew, and it was the first time, and that means these things kill, and it's not and we were all in caravans, and it was frightening. And the president of Israel came, and he let citizens vent their frustrations. So I gave one of my best speeches. And I said, listen, I'm going to take the whole yeshiva and move it to Yerushalayim. If you can't protect us, because we really had hundreds of guys in caravans. The second I said that, it was a minister, he said, excuse me, Rabbi, we used to be in Ingiv. We weren't even religious. And we didn't have Qassam rockets. We had Grud rockets. And no one spoke about leaving. And then someone else said, this guy wasn't born here. That's why he's talking about leaving. And someone else, and the president, rightfully so, even though I didn't mean it, I meant we're going to take them to Yerushalayim for a demonstration. Doesn't make a difference. The president put his back to me and said, I'm happy there are responsible people here that understand their responsibility. Day-to-day life in Sderot it's really a beautiful town. There are a lot of beautiful parks. We had what to do with helping to build some of them. Really high-level parks. One park even the army uses as training because there's a ninja, and our guys like to use it late at night. There's a lot of basketball, tennis, and it's a beautiful town. Ir Sfar has a special bracha, and the laning on Simchas Torah tells so much. It first of all talks about border towns. It talks about Ashrecha Yisrael, Mi Chamocha, Am Nosha B'Hashem, Asher Cherev Gavatecha, Vikachshu Evecha Lach, V'Atal B'Motimo Tidroch. But I think people have to visit Sderot because a lot of people say, wait, I didn't picture it like this. This is beautiful. One guy even said, what are you guys raising money for? Your yeshiva is nicer than ours. They're wrong. We need to make the base measures twice the size and the lunchroom. But he was like startled. He didn't believe that a hick town in southern Israel has such beautiful places. And Torah has to be beautiful. The parks have to be beautiful. You know, the Gemara in Baba Basra says that you're not allowed in a city to put trees because it doesn't make it nice enough. All the Rishonim say that's talking in Israel. How do you know? Doesn't say. They say for sure. And we have no inyan to make Chutz La'aretz beautiful, and we have all the reason in the world to make Eretz Yisrael beautiful. And that's what Sderot is, a beautiful town. But you'll see there are other beautiful towns around, Netivot, Ofakim, who are proud of Sderot, and we think that's a picture of victory. When you see hundreds of people playing in the parks, and that's what was on this Yom Ha'atzmaut. Even though it was a little scary this time because there were so many people, but thank God everything went okay. When you see beautiful buildings coming up, and when you can see the buildings with help that we're going to need, when you can see those buildings coming up, people will be able to proudly say, we won.
Rabbi Fendel, I want to thank you so much for your time, much more importantly for what you do, what you're building, who you are. All of us, Rabbi Moskowitz, Rabbi Brody, and myself have been to Sderot. We want to encourage others. I know that you are incredibly hospitable. You and the yeshiva and the whole community are eager for people to come to see, to experience firsthand, to be on that rooftop, to see that menorah made out of rockets, to see the heart and soul, the yeshiva at its center. So thank you for having been to our community. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all that you're doing. And we're looking forward to, please God, very soon, if not already beginning now, a time that Sderot has peace and harmony and quiet and tranquility.
Amen.
That nothing needs to be bulletproof, nothing needs to be bomb-proof, nothing needs to be protected, because we have safety and security in Gaza, from Gaza, and all over Israel. Thank you so, so much.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks a lot. We also hope that we'll be able to open up a branch in the Gaza Strip. Sounds far-fetched, but you never could tell. That's our hope. But I have to say that we need your partnership. We know we could count on it, and we appreciate it. Together, we're going to make great things happen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Catch us next time for another peek behind the Bima.